Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We're here at Sweetwater's Gear Fest, and I'm joined by Fab Dupont.
Hi.
You are here with Dangerous, talking about their products. You also just did a seminar.
Yes.
But let's talk about some other things as well today. Now, your credits include people like Queen Latifah, Jennifer Lopez, Bon Jovi, Isaac Hayes. The list is really pretty incredible.
Okay.
You also own a studio called Flux Studios in New York. Can you tell us how you got started in the industry, how you got to where you are today?
Well, like everybody else, I was making music. You know, my father bought me a saxophone when I was 7 years old, and then I started practicing saxophone, and then I was a saxophone player, and then I played weddings and bars and bar mitzvahs, and then moved to the States from Paris. I grew up in Paris. And then I went to college for composition and arranging, and then came out of college, got a job as a staff composer for a multimedia company. So I wrote miles and miles of music, and I use the word miles of music it's literally metered music.
Right.
I need 4 minutes of something that sounds like medieval music today. Okay. So I did that for a while, and then I used the money from that to start building my little studio to do my own records. So then I made my own records, and then didn't get signed. But I got a lot of calls from the people who said they didn't want to sign me, that said, hey, I would like, could you make this guy's record sound like your record? So I was kind of dragged into the production mixing thing by people who liked the way my record sounded. So I started doing that as my day job, because I thought it kind of beat, being a bus driver. So you can be a bus driver to pay for your music, or you can make other people's music to pay for your music. So I did that. And then I did a second record, which did exactly the same thing as the first record, which means it brought me even more production gigs and more mixing gigs. And I was touring, met some musicians, built a team, a bunch of friends, and started making good music together. And then one record leads to another record, and then you do a record for somebody who's famously unknown.
Right.
And then that person happens to do well with the record you do with them, and so they call you back, and then they have a friend who does equally well, and then they have a friend, and they have a friend. And then about 10 years later, now I have a 3-room studio in Manhattan, and I produce and mix records for lots of different kinds of people.
Right. Well, I've heard a lot of your mixes and in some of your demonstrations and things. One thing that's always impressed me is how musical your mixes are, and you use the word organic, and I think that's very apt for what you do. How do you think your experience coming from being an accomplished musician yourself and all those years of composing and working in all those different styles, how does that inform the way that you mix or approach other people's music?
It's everything. It's everything. There's a very fine line between producing and mixing, and it's thinner every day. Coming from the musician side means I have the sensibility to be able to discuss song structure with a singer-songwriter on Monday, and then do a beat for an R&B artist on Tuesday, and then mix a straight-ahead jazz record on Wednesday, because I know all those musics, because I like all music, so I listen to everything. My background as a musician allows me to have the vocabulary and the experience to know what the musicians feel like, so that I can communicate with them and relate to their experience, because I have the same experience whenever I'm on the other side of the glass. So if I see a singer struggling, I know why they're struggling, because I remember how I struggled last time I recorded my vocal track. So I'm able to talk to them about that. If somebody comes in with a song that's 6 minutes long, I have the arguments that would allow them to let me cut it down to 3:35, so it stands a chance to being played in places. So it's really a whole thing. And as far as the mixing goes, today, when I mix a modern pop track, if I mix a straight-ahead record, then just mix a record. It's audio, it's mixing, it's fine. If I mix a straight-ahead a pop record, that's production at this point, because the new production techniques from a lot of people I work with are pretty broad, meaning the stuff comes in with 5 bass drums and 5 snare drums, and they say, go ahead, do that. So I listen to the rough mixes, and I'm like, really? So there's a lot of musical decisions to be made on the mixing side of things.
You're almost arranging at that point as part of the mixing process.
It depends who the producer is, but very often I'm kind of like damage controlling the track, and I'm finishing the producer's job very often, which is fine. I don't care. Actually more fun. It's kind of boring to just push faders and just say, okay, this bass drum needs a little bit of that, whatever. The musician side of things, to me, is everything in being able to make the tracks sound the way I make them sound, because I make the tracks sound the way I hear them when I'm playing music. it's really, for me, an immersive experience. I want to be able to close my eyes and feel like I'm there. And I want it to feel the same as when I'm there playing. And so that's my approach to mixing and producing records.
Now, as you've built your studio, I've been to your studio, and it's a very comfortable space with recording spaces, control rooms. You have 2 control rooms, correct?
Yeah, 3 now.
3 now.
Wow.
And you've really worked hard, I think, to combine vintage with modern. Can you talk a little bit about how you're approaching bringing those 2 together in your production style?
Absolutely. That was a very conscious thing, and actually I did it the other way than most people do. Most people start with an analog system and they reluctantly bring computers and digital and modern in. I always I've never made music without a computer, ever. I mean, recorded music. And so I started with an all digital environment.
Right.
And as I got better, my ears opened up and I started to realize that there were things that I needed to be able to make the records sound the way I want them to sound. So I hit a ceiling using just the digital technology. And that's, at that time, I met the people from Dangerous Music, and I got a really interesting education from them on they were able to show me, to explain to me, put words on my feelings. Like, I felt a certain way about the way my track sounded. I couldn't really articulate why. And they showed me the theory behind my problem. It was very nice. So I started using the 2-bus. That was the first piece of analog gear besides speakers. That was the very first piece of analog gear integrated in my workflow. And then a monitoring section, and then, and then they turned me into other kind of processing, analog processing, like analog EQs and stuff. I started to very carefully listen to the differences. And I find that since that time, the integration of both makes for a better sound, B, better workflow, C, it's an awful lot more fun. So I have designed 2 rooms, one which is dedicated towards tracking. In that room we have an older Neve console. I used to track with just a bunch of hardboard preamps and then straight into the converter. And it was cost effective. It was hell, because to make a good cue mix and to just like jump from A to B and do experiment, you can't. It's just chaos. And also just have everything integrated in one spot, and having all the level management done in analog totally changed the way we function. And so what we did is we took the Neve console, we yanked out the monitoring section because it didn't sound that great, and we put in the Dangerous monitoring section in it. And then we also have a 2-bus in the room, even though we have a console. And we don't use the console for mixing in that room. We use a 2-bus. And we integrated that with the most extensive Pro Tools system we could. And so now we have a system that has both the analog backend old school for the preamps in the console, analog backend modern, Dangerous Music, 2-bus, and monitoring. And then it has a very powerful Pro Tools rig. The integration of the 2 makes that most people who work in that room come out of it and said, I haven't worked in environments where it felt so good. Just the cue system itself. Being able to work on a cue system that's all copper, no silicone, meaning no digital, all analog. People forgot how that feels. That means when you hit the string, you hear it right away. There's no latency, there's no... Even with the Pro Tools rig, you don't go through a computer, you don't go ADDA. We've done a lot of like really small little details that are pretty intense to implement, but the results are wonderful. Musicians feel good, they sound better because they feel better. So we did that on the tracking room. On the mixing room, I created an environment for myself where I can do anything I want. Production, mixing, or even mastering. All in one space. And so I have one desk that has my full Dangerous rig. So I have a Dangerous mastering ring on the right and a Dangerous monitoring ring on the left. And I use a 2-bus too. And a mirror of the Pro Tools ring in the other room, so I can take any mix between the 2 rooms and they open the same, which is wonderful. And it's designed to be completely ergonomically transparent. So if you're producing a track, making beats or whatever, everything is right at your fingertips right away. If you're mixing, there's nothing in the way between you and the speakers. If you're mastering, I have my mastering rig right here, and the room can do anything.